The safe haven of Northeast Florida is taking legal action against the Department of Children and Families after the death of a 5-year-old girl. Investigators reveal that Zykeria Robinson died after signs of child abuse. Our Crystal Bailey is joining us live on your side tonight with the details.
That's right. Safe Haven of Northeast Florida tells us that they've already retained a lawyer tonight. And today, the advocacy organization held a press conference with family members of Zykeria here at their office in Murray Hill. They're claiming negligence on the part of DCF because there was an investigation done before Zykeria died. Zykeria grandparents say they thought something was not right before, and they tried to hire legal aid to take custody of their grandchildren over the summer. Now, DCF did not find any signs of child abuse in that investigation back in May, but Zykeria mom, Michelle Canamore, and her boyfriend, Jonte Harris, were arrested and charged with child abuse after Zykeria died in October of last year. And now Zykeria grandparents say they've officially adopted Zykeria 6-year-old sister.
We don't ever have to worry about anybody else harming one of our grandkids again.
And the spokesperson of Safe Haven tells us they've been in contact with the state attorney's office. They believe prosecutors are going to seek the death penalty against Jonte Harris. We've reached out to DCF for a response regarding that upcoming lawsuit. We're waiting to hear back. I'm reporting live from Murray Hill. Crystal Bailey, First Coast News, on your side.